Welcome to the Chicago Bears Podcast, a presentation of ESPN Chicago, Chicago's home for sports. Here's your host, Pat, the designer.
Bear down, Bears fans. Welcome into another episode of the Chicago Bears Podcast, the Friday edition. We got Chris Bleck and Adam Abdalla in the building from Bleck and Abdalla, fresh off of the show. Boys, what's going on?
Pat, what's up, man? It's
I'm
a
very
Friday.
loud,
We're talking Bears football. I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Excited to be here. Let's talk some Bears.
Welcome to the pod, dog. I mean, listen, we got a lot to get into here. We got Ryan Poles talking about, he believes that the Bears should be contending for the NFC North title this season. We'll talk about that, his thoughts with the Athletic. Arlington Heights pushback. Arlington Heights is not happy that the Bears are trying to break ground. Get into that a little bit. I love that Bleck smiles immediately on that one. And then hottest takes that we've heard, coldest takes that we've heard, all that more. Quick hit on the Chicago Bears Podcast. No quarters into this, just straight conversation. Let's get into the show, boys, because everybody in Chicago is looking around at the Bears and saying 7 wins, 6 wins maybe. They still suck. I'm hoping for the best. Ryan Poles says that we should be contending for an NFC North title this season. Now, SI basically does have us contending. They have the Vikings at 9.5 wins. I believe they have Detroit at 9 wins even, and the Bears at 7. So technically, you would be contending. But do you agree with the thought process of Ryan Poles here? And do you like the fact that at a minimum, he has this belief in his team already?
I like it. I agree with him. They should contend for the division at least, and they should be in contention to make the playoffs this season. Pat, when you make the moves that Poles has made in this offseason, he basically addressed every single level of the entire football team on both sides of the ball, offensive line, defensive line. Now, you could be a detractor and say he didn't get an edge rusher. He did a lot of work in the draft, though, up the middle, which will help the defensive line. They address linebacker. They address the secondary. You go to the offense, you get a wide receiver, number 1 wide receiver. They get a new running back to add to the mix in the draft. They've addressed every level of both sides of the football. This team is not a playoff team heading into the season. They should compete to get to the playoffs this year. That's what I think we should be looking at in this upcoming year.
Yeah, I want to see them in the hunt. In that graphic, Sunday Night Football, Steve Kornacki with the khakis on, up against doing all the motioning, and he's moving teams in and out and the percentages and stuff. That's what I want. And we all saw from the Vikings that 13 wins means nothing when they got to the playoffs. So I think they come down a little bit. I think this is a division where 10 wins this division. And so if you're talking about the Vikings or the Lions being around 9 or 10 wins, I think the Bears are going to win 8 or 9 games. So, it could come down to the last weekend, but I think they can win 8 games. And if you win 8 games, and I believe the division is won with 10 or 9 games, then absolutely they're competing for a division title.
Well, guys, also look at it this way, right, Pat? You said that, there are some people in town who think that they're still not good enough. 6, 7 wins.
6, 7 wins.
Let's just base it off of what Vegas is telling us. The win total right now is at 7.5, right? So 1 or 2 things go your way. Now you're talking about a team that's fighting 500 throughout the season, right? So that's not a loser. Right. And most of the NFL is in that range. It's around 500. If things break your way, you're a playoff team. Right. And there's always, 3 or 4 teams per conference that are like legitimate title contenders. But everyone else is in the middle except for the very worst of the league. And this is not a team that's going to be a 3 or 4 win team again. And so that's why I think Abdalla and I are on the show. We've been kind of painted in some situations as like we're a little too positive over this. But I think the approach that we're taking is that it's more of a logical look at the rest of the National Football League. Most weeks, when you see the matchups, everyone's about even. There's a couple of game breakers that kind of tilt the projections of each contest. We're looking at Kansas City. We're looking at Buffalo with Josh Allen, Cincinnati with Burrow. But outside of that, most rosters in the NFL are about even. They're average, right? And it's what you do with that. And I think what Poles has done in this offseason is he's gotten us back to like level. Yeah. Right. Like I don't think this is a title contender, and I would be totally surprised if they went 6-0 in the division and then like walked away with the division title and into the playoffs. Like if we're sitting here in December having this conversation and the Bears are first in the NFC North and they haven't lost in the division, I would be surprised by that. I don't think they're that good, but I do think they should be in the mix. And I think that's kind of what Ryan Poles is pointing to, is that they should be in the mix, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, to me, right, I think that what I read this as is you should be able to beat the guys in your division at a minimum, right? And we should be able to win games versus the NFC North. And I kind of agree with that, right? Like, to me, I don't know if I have the Packers guaranteed as 2 wins this season, but I feel like the Bears are at least a better team than the Packers are right now because they've had so much change. When I look at the Vikings, I agree with you. I think the Vikings are going to take a massive step back. I think that you could see the Vikings drop down to an 8 or 9 win team just based on a lot of the turmoil that went on going into the end of the season, how many 1-win games. And now, guess what? You're not playing up against kind of the mid-level teams anymore. You got the best of the best coming out here versus the Vikings. I think they're going to take a step back. I think depending on how our schedule, right, what happens in the game before coming into the next game, we could have a favorable matchup with the Vikings at times. And the Lions, I mean, like, the NFL has said that the Lions are the darlings of the NFL, that they're going to come out and they're going to be this dominant team. You guys show me. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions finish with 9 wins.
Well, but also, too, you have to remember, that's only 6 games.
Yeah.
You play the Bucks, you play the Panthers, you play the Cardinals. Like, you play who knows what the Broncos are going to be like. Like, there's opportunity. I think that they should at least split with every team in the division. Like, if you split with every team in the division and, like, let's say you find a way to sweep the Packers, like that, you should at least be expecting now splitting with winning your home games against the Vikings and the Lions. And then you've got an easier schedule now because of where you finished last year, where you're playing teams like the Panthers and the Cardinals at the end of the year. You're playing the Bucks in week 2 where, okay, is it going to be hot in Tampa? Sure, but it's still hot up here. So I don't think that that's that big of a deal. You know, you're playing easier teams. I think the way the schedule shakes out, I would be surprised. Like, if they only win 6 games, to me, that's not good enough. And now we're used to have to start questioning, okay, well, is Ryan Poles not necessarily the right guy, but like, is he drafting the right way? Is Justin Fields the right guy? Like, you start having more questions about this franchise if they only have 6 wins. Like, to me, the bare minimum is 6 wins.
Well, you're questioning, not only are you questioning the GM, you're questioning the quarterback.
Absolutely.
Because if you're only getting to 6, I think we assume that maybe the step that we're hoping to see doesn't really stick with Justin Fields and his development. And then I think you're definitely questioning the coach. You know, the Bears were the only team in the hiring cycle when they hired Matt Eberflus to go defensive. Everyone else took an offensive-minded coach who then tried to revamp their entire offense. You know, you could look at the Giants with Daboll. You could look at other places. The Bears went oppo to that, like, mindset. And so I think what would happen, especially with the fan base, is if, say, Justin's not getting it, the offense isn't scoring like it kind of did at points last season.
We were scoring 30 points a lot.
which was positive. But the defense, if the defense doesn't improve, Eberflus is going to be the one that fans are going to blame. And so I think that's also where the whole conversation is. The reason we're looking at 7, 8, and 9 wins, I think 9 is probably high, but like that 7 to 8 range, it would allow the Bears to improve, but they may miss the playoffs, right? Like, if you win 8 games, you go 8 and 9, there is a chance you miss the playoffs, but it could still be a positive step in the right direction for the team.
No, 100%. I think that the like what you said, if they sweep the Packers and split the other, that's 4-2. You went 4-2 in your division.
Right, so
that's
now,
a huge step. Now, can you find 4 more wins?
Right, exactly. And like what Adam was saying is that you look at those other teams who are projected to be worse rosters or not in the Bears situation of kind of like the upward trajectory, because like Tampa theoretically is like a rebuilding team hoping to tank out so then they can get Caleb Williams or someone next year, right? So like, that's a team, can you find those 3 wins that get you to that 7 number? And then at that point, it's like, okay, let's see what this team can do and see how good the quarterback is.
Well, and speaking of that, you know, like with Tampa and with Carolina and with, because we don't know what Bryce Young is going to be. We don't know what Jordan Love is going to be.
Do we know that he's starting? Do we know that Bryce is starting season?
By the time they get to them, he probably will be starting. And if they were smart, they wouldn't do the same thing the Bears did and start Andy Dalton instead of Justin Fields. Just let Bryce Young go out there and figure it out. But there are multiple games, 10 to 11 games, where when you're at home also for like the Lions and the Vikings, where if Justin Fields has the ball at the end, he's the best player on the field. He's the best quarterback on the field.
Yes.
There are so many games. There's at least 10 games where Justin Fields is the better quarterback, where at least that's what we hope he can be. Where even as a runner and a passer,
the better talent right now, maybe. I don't know if we can say better passer, but the better talent as a whole.
Baker Mayfield for the Bucs,
he should be better.
Like all these, I mean, you
that
could
game
argue.
Only scares me because of the defensive line, though.
But you can argue like Derek Carr. You can make the arguments for Kirk Cousins and that kind of thing. That's why home and away, like kind of those things. Is Kyler Murray going to be playing in that last second to last game against the Cardinals? Like there are question marks. Like obviously the games against the Chiefs, it's not going to matter because the Chiefs are probably going to win that game. But there are multiple games where if Justin Fields is the guy that we think he can be and that the Bears hope he can be, he's going to be the better player at quarterback. And when it comes to crunch time towards the end of the game and he's got the ball, we saw it last year. Yeah. They had the ball. They were driving in multiple games. And it was things that he wasn't controlling were the reasons that they lost games. Velus Jones muffs a couple punts. Darnell Mooney can't get a butt cheek down in the end zone, so they lose that game. There's a ball literally.
I'm still annoyed at that.
I'm so mad.
There's a ball. Smith Marset has a ball ripped out of his hands, and so they can't win that game.
Right there. It's right there.
Exactly.
It's right there.
So
it's right there.
If those games now go in the favor of the Bears because of the better talent, and that better talent trickles down to everyone else, you can say that they'll put them in a position to win more games.
So to go to retort your point, though, the Bears got to keep Fields healthy.
Yes.
Right? Like, because what we saw last year against the Jets is that if the Bears entered a game without Justin Fields, that's a automatic game starts, you lost.
Oh, yeah.
Like they had no chance against the Jets
no trust
last
in
year,
PJ
which
Walker?
I think is, I just think it's funny for people who are still crapping on Justin Fields and his development. It's like, do you not realize that he was the reason they were kept in games last year, and that hopefully you surround him with some more talent and they can actually win the games? But like, go back to the games that he hasn't played, you're dead in the water. Like there's no chance. So like, that's why keeping him healthy throughout the season, like you said, like when they get to that point, will Kyler Murray be there? Well, it's just as important for the Bears in their future that our guy is healthy and available.
100%. Let us know how you guys feel in the comments below. Love the great debate. Make sure y'all drop in them comments, man. Hit that like button. At least drop a bird down and let us know that you are here.